This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. I'm so glad you're joining us today. This is your host, Tim Link, and joining us for our show today is authors Candace Fleming and illustrator Eric Rohmann talk to us about their latest book, Strongheart, Wonder Dog of the Silver Screen. So we're going to be real interested to find out more about the book and the concept and all the wonderful illustrations inside of the book, as well as a little bit about the writing styles and the whole creative process when you're partnering together to write a book as well as put the illustrations together. So it'll be fun and interesting to learn about those techniques and their hidden secrets on how they go about doing it. So it's going to be a fun and exciting show today. I want everybody to hang tight. We're going to come back right after these commercial breaks. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
You know that feeling when you go to clean the litter box and it's a complete disaster? Yeah, we've got you covered. Introducing World's Best Cat Litter Zero Mess, the advanced litter that gives you 2 times better clumping and more odor control with less litter. Zero Mess combines the concentrated power of corn with super absorbent plant fibers. Translation: scoop once and you're done. Find it at a pet store near you and save $2. Visit www.saveonworldsbest.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. This is Tim Link, your host for tonight and always on this show. Super excited today to have the author of Strongheart, Wonder Dog of the Silver Screen, Candace Fleming, and illustrator extraordinaire Eric Rohmann to talk to us a little bit about the book. So, Candace, Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Well, congratulations on another successful book. I love the cover design. I love the illustrations right off the bat. The topic is spot on as well. So start with Candace first. Tell us a little bit about the book and the concept behind it, how you came about the creation of wanting to put this in writing.
Well, I found I ran across the story of Strongheart. I ran across, about 4 sentences, and it was in a book I was reading about Rin Tin Tin, and they mentioned that Rin Tin Tin was not the first and that Strongheart had been the first, but I think there was maybe 4 or 5 sentences entirely about him, and I was curious. So I went and did a little bit of research, some initial research, and discovered that there's nothing out there about him. And so, one thing led to another. I ended up reading a lot of old New York Times and a lot of old silver screen magazines from the 1920s to sort of put together his story, since no one had really written it. Initially, I thought I was going to write it as a piece of nonfiction, but what I quickly discovered was that there are big holes in his history. And because I am writing for a younger audience, it made more sense to actually fictionalize it. So it's based on the true story, but some of the events are fictionalized.
I found it real interesting because I read the title, obviously, and it struck a chord. And then, of course, you see the beautiful illustration that Eric, that you put together of Strongheart. He's a beautiful German Shepherd, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so that does ring back to Rin Tin Tin. But I'm not familiar with the story of Strongheart. And just like as you eloquently put it, it's something that people don't really know about.
Yeah, it's definitely a lost piece of history, and I felt, as a dog lover anyway, I felt a little indignant that he'd been the first, and, Rin Tin Tin and his owner actually, kind of carried the wave of German Shepherd popularity, but it was Strongheart that was the popular German Shepherd. The German Shepherd becomes the most popular dog in the United States, not because of Rin Tin Tin, but because of Strongheart.
And when Larry Trimble, the director, had this idea and introduced Strongheart to a movie-going audience in the early 1920s, there were very few German Shepherds in the United States.
Right.
And within 10 years, I forget the exact numbers, but they're something like from 300 German Shepherds to 30,000 German Shepherds. It became a wildly popular breed, and that's because Strongheart was such a popular movie star.
Yeah, the number 1 box office draw for, Eric, 7 years?
Yeah.
I think he was, number 1 box office draw. I mean, people thought of him as an actor. That's how they talked about him in reviews and other articles, as like a great actor, not a dog. In fact, he was the whole concept of having a dog star. We think of it's kind of common, Lassie, Rin Tin Tin, but it wasn't. Strongheart was the first. He's the first one.
You had dogs in movies then, of course.
Comedy Rules,
right?
Like with Charlie Chaplin and
Right. That's a sort of a dog doing something silly, but the idea of a dog carrying the movie, the dog being the emotional center of a film,
the script being written for the dog.
Yeah. When Larry Trimble, suggested this, my guess is they probably looked at him and said, "That's kind of ridiculous. You want us to spend money to make a dog a star?" And he was smart enough and forward-thinking enough to know that his audience would want to see something like that.
That's fascinating. And I also find it very fascinating that sort of the trend continues, and the fact that even dating back to here we're talking about the 1920s, the early part of the century, a dog that was not known all of a sudden becomes a movie star. Now everybody wants to have that breed. And we sort of see that trending now. Whenever there's a hit TV show or a hit movie come out, all of a sudden that's the dog flavor of the day.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Yeah. And again, he's sort of the first in the sense of dogs that have a fan base, that he really is the very first. He even has a dog food named after him, which I think is still around. Strongheart dog food.
Is this did that? It's funny because that was the second part of when I saw the title and saw the picture. Obviously the correlation with Rin Tin Tin. But I remember that. I don't remember seeing it on the shelves lately. I don't know if it's a brand that I would ever consider feeding my dogs. Yeah. No offense to the Strongheart manufacturers if they're still out there today. But yeah, I do recall that. I do recall his brilliant face on the front of the can of food. Mm-hmm. So that is fascinating.
Yeah. And think of the timing as well. You have this breed of dog that's between the two world wars that involved Germany. And so there was just this timing that was, it was 1920, and the dog became really popular, and it's still, I think I had read something recently that it's moved back into the top 3 as a popular breed of dog, which is pretty amazing. It's sustained itself. I grew up, when I was a boy, we had German Shepherds at home. So, it's a breed that I'm familiar with. And so when I got a chance, when Candy started writing the manuscript and said, would you be interested in doing something with this? And, I of course I was, because, I had that childhood tie-in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Candace, you talked about how you found out about this, wanted to do a nonfiction book to really get to the heart of the matter, who is Strongheart and how do we, bring this history out. But then it switched over, not only because of your audience for this particular book is young adults, but also just trying to dig up the history behind it. Walk us through that process. I mean, was it something at some point you just said, hey, look, I'm not going to have enough meat on this bone to write something that would...
great. No pun intended. No meat on this bone. Which is exactly what the problem was. I had a lot of information. I had a lot of, like I said, I read a lot of old... I had to go back to silver screen magazines and read a lot of that. But they're sort of silly in the way they were written in the 1920s. Probably still are now, I just don't read them. But they are pretty silly in the fact that they actually would interview the dog, right? Or they'd take pictures of Strongheart and Mrs. Strongheart, his partner, or the puppies, and they would interview them and write about them as if they were people. Talk about their trip to New York and how they stayed at the McAlpin Hotel in the presidential suite and went to restaurants where they actually hopped up at the tables on chairs in the restaurant, and the waiters tied napkins around the necks, and then they ordered steak. I'm thinking somebody ordered steak, but probably not Strongheart. But they actually ate in the restaurant. I mean, so they talked about them in ways that didn't really help the kind of research that I was trying to do. And it has suddenly occurred to me that if the goal was for people to know about this amazing dog, I was going to have to fill in those places with my imagination, those places where I didn't have a clue what was going on in the story. The book itself is based as closely as I can to fact, but I really don't know like what Larry Trumbull actually said to Strongheart. I don't really know what Jane Murfin, the screenwriter, and Larry said to each other. I know they did have a romance. Eventually they got married. So, I mean, a lot of it is true. I think the murkiest part of the entire story is the family that attempted to extort the dog and the dog's owner by claiming that he actually ate their child, which was ridiculous, and the child proved to be completely unharmed. We know that there was a trial. I'm not real sure what happened at that trial. We know that somehow they discovered that the family was perjuring themselves, but I'm not entirely sure how that happened. And so after a while, I realized I probably wasn't going to find that information. And for me to write a piece of nonfiction that said, we're not sure exactly what happened, was not going to satisfy my readers. And in fact, it didn't satisfy me in terms of storytelling. So, like I said, I went and filled in those gaps with my imagination the best that I could, and as close to reliable as it possibly can.
But you also extended Strongheart's movie persona to the off the movie set parts of the storytelling.
Right.
And there's a scene, I'm not going to give anything away, but there's a scene in the courtroom where his acting skills come into play. Mm-hmm. So when I first read it, I was delighted by that kind of crossover where the one we see in the few bits of film that still exist, the Strongheart that we see, is the Strongheart you will see in Candy's telling.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. That's fantastic. So tell us, Eric, a little bit about the illustrations inside of the book and that whole process. Do you guys work as a tag team along the way while you're putting this together, or is it more of, Candy, you put together the book and then you fill in the illustrations on the back end? Eric, tell us a little bit about that whole process.
I wrote the manuscript, and I wasn't sure if Eric and I have worked on other things before, but we don't always work together. When I initially wrote it, I wasn't sure he was actually going to come on board. And yet I kept talking to him about how I envisioned it as being, it is a novel, but I envisioned it as being heavily illustrated, and in places, the art taking the place of the text. In place of the text, you would have art, mostly because it is a book about a dog in the silent screen. And so a lot of that is pure action, right? Silent screen actor. And that's how I envisioned it. And when I sent it to my editor, she didn't quite see what I was after. But Eric did, because I'd been talking about it with him for, a good year that I'd been working on it. And so initially he said, well, here's what I'll do. Let me sketch out a few things to make clear to her. Let me sketch out what it is that you're saying, just so you can make it clear to her how you envision the book. And then, of course, as soon as he sketched out a few things, well, everybody wanted him to do it. I wanted him to do it. The editor wanted to do it, him to do it. And I think, actually, he wanted to do it, too. Like you said earlier, he had that real connection with German Shepherds from his own childhood. So.
And I had this idea that, like Candy said, that let's say we're talking about she's writing about getting ready for a scene that takes place on a movie set, and she would write up to the point where the scene started, and then I would use illustrations to show that particular scene. So you would not only have this written story, but you would have the visual story. And the more when I finally got the manuscript, the more I looked at it, she had a lot of descriptive, very emotional storytelling there. And in a way, I changed the way I was going to make the pictures. If you look at it now, not all the pictures have, in fact, most don't have a lot of background. So what I tried to do is show Strongheart the dog relating to a person or another dog, and try to show the emotion that the dog had, so that without a lot of description or anything else in the background, so that the words that Candy had written and my picture could be seen together, but not saying the same thing. So there's a scene where they're on a mountain, and there's a rescue about to ensue, and instead of putting all the descriptive images of Strongheart rescuing and that sort of thing, I just showed Strongheart before he actually went and did it, and let Candy's writing describe what was going to happen next. So it was a really delicate balance trying to find a way to illustrate without being too loud, without overwhelming the words, or worse even, saying the same thing the words say.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. Very good.
And of course, they're black and white for the obvious reason. I tried to soften them a little. The illustrations aren't really kind of hard-edged. I tried to find particular poses, viewpoints that would feel like they might have been shot with a camera in the 1920s. So all of that, Candy says she did a lot of research. I looked at lots of pictures of films from that time, mostly from the photoplay magazines that Candy was actually reading.
The Screen Digest photoplay magazine. Fun to read, but yeah,
absolutely. And it comes through loud and clear, Eric. I mean, that's one of the things I loved about the illustrations is the fact that it matches the black and white theme of the silver screen. They look like almost beautiful standalone charcoal design, something I would take one off and put in a frame somewhere. So I think you did an excellent job.
It was really essential. I mean, like it is this is true of any illustrated book you do. It's absolutely essential that you get the feeling that the character has, so that when your young reader, or your old reader, I suppose, comes upon that animal, the words they've been reading suggests an emotion. And if your illustration doesn't carry that over and in some ways magnify it, then I think you've failed. So often we see illustrations that are, the words say something and then it sort of looks like kind of a generic animal. And what I tried to do is in my pictures give the same emotion that Candy gave Strongheart in words.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to come to a commercial break here real quick. And once we finish that, we'll come back, talk a little bit more with Candace Fleming and Eric Rohmann about the book Strongheart, Wonder Dog of the Silver Screen. I want to talk to a little bit more about the whole writing process as well. So everybody just hang tight. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Sit. Stay. We'll be right back after a short pause. Well, 4 to be exact.
Does your dog itch, scratch, stink, or shed like crazy? Come to Dynovite for help.
Order a 90-day supply of Dynovite.
Dynovite for life.
Pick up 2 tubes of Doggo Suds.
Get the 3rd tube free.
Peppermint, tea tree, lavender, Doggo Sud shampoo.
Made with all-natural coconut, jojoba, aloe. Great for healthy skin and soft, shiny coats.
But no itchy, harsh chemicals.
Lather up, rinse away.
Try Doggo Suds. Buy 2, get 1 free.
At Dynovite.com.
DINOVITE.com.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Continue our conversation with Candace Fleming and Eric Rohmann to talk to them about their latest book, Strongheart, Wonder Dog of the Silver Screen. So, guys, walk us through that process of and timeline, I guess, as far as when the idea popped in your mind, Candace, of putting this together, attach that with all the research that goes into it and the shifts and changes you have to do there. Eric getting involved with the illustration part of it. Is there a particular flow to how this works? Is there a lot of back and forth? And timing, how long does it take to put together a masterpiece like this?
This is a terrible answer, but it's sort of every book takes its own time, and sometimes it's a speedier journey. Strongheart was not, I think, the fastest journey. I had this idea years ago, and like I said, I couldn't find the information, and I had other projects I was working on. And so, for me, it was probably 2 years from the time I got the initial idea to the time I finished the manuscript. Eric, I think, had a much harder time, because he had so many paintings that he had to do for the book. I guess I'm speaking for him, but for us, it's not much of a give or take. We'll discuss, like, if we need words that we need descriptions removed because we no longer need them because the art is doing that job. So we will do that, go back and forth, what makes the best story. But really, pretty much when I'm done with the manuscript, my job is pretty much done. I hand it to Eric, and he gets to work. Would you agree with that, Eric?
Yeah, and I think that, and I'll talk for you now, that when Candy comes up with an idea for a book, there's that initial excitement about it. There's something, because you're constantly coming up with ideas for books, but there's something that sticks, something that snags you, and Strongheart did. And, what makes Candy so good at what she does is that she may start with an idea about what this book is going to be about, but what she does is she lets the research and the story find its own way. So it may be, you may think it's going to start off being about one thing and it finds its way another way. And of course that takes time, but that's the way you want to do it because the story kind of has a way it wants to be told. And if she would have tried to force it into a piece of nonfiction, it wouldn't have done it. Well, I get the manuscript from her. And, I read when I had read the first maybe 10 pages, I have images pop into my head. And that's where I sort of got that idea that, well, maybe there's some gaps in this that I can fill in with illustrations. And what I mean by that is you have something that would work if it was written, and then just as if it was written, but then the illustrations somehow say something slightly different. So when you put the two together, they become something better, something more. And, that's always difficult to do. And I took on this project. I think there are, 70 maybe paintings in the book. And that's just a lot of things to paint and try to get right.
And I thought that was fascinating as well, because looking at a lot of books there, this is perfect for adults as well as young adults, but it's, as you said, Candace, geared towards young adults. This is a pretty hefty book. 200 and some pages, a lot of great illustrations, a lot of great verbiage in here. I mean, this is not your typical one and done quick book. And especially when I look at a lot of young adult books, it's either very heavily laden with the manuscript and with some nice sketches and designs, illustrations that go along with it, or it's the opposite way around. Maybe the author didn't have a lot to write and, putting the crux on the illustrator to put together. But this has what I call we'll use another dog metaphor here, a real meaty type of a book for someone to read.
That I think that was the goal. I mean, I know that was the goal. Was maybe that I was going to say, the story to really chew on. Oh my gosh, we're really going bad here. But
staying out of it.
Thank you very much.
But that's exactly it. I really wanted to do Strongheart proud, I guess, so to speak. Like I said, I was once I discovered his story, I was passionate to return him to the historical record. I just really wanted people to know about him. And what better people to know than younger readers, because they'll read him and they'll take him to heart and they'll carry him for the rest of their life. They will always know about Strongheart, which is one of the reasons I love to write for young readers, is those books, if they love them, become part of their life. And so part of my biggest passion was to bring him back to the historical record, bring him back to people's memories. So the writing of it, and I know Eric felt the same way, that the illustrating of it was really important. We really wanted to give them a story that made them think, that made them care, that delighted them, trying to do all those things. And I think at the end of the day, I think it does that. I think it's a really delightful story about a dog, a true story about a movie star dog, which we don't often see. But I think the bigger issue is about a dog needing a home and a dog needing the best kind of home. That is where people love him and he has a family. And in this case, the true story of Strongheart, and in the book as well, he's a dog that's rehabilitated by love. He starts out as a dog that was well-loved with his family, is taken by the German police force and turned into a fierce guard dog that doesn't know how to play, doesn't know how to give or accept love on any level, and how Larry Trumbull finds him and rehabilitates him, not just makes him a movie star, but makes him a well-loved dog, makes him a dog, a happy dog. And that's a meaty story. And it just has to be.
And it's also an old-fashioned story, and I don't mean that in any negative or pejorative way. There are always, in the world of children's books, there are always dog stories. It's one of those things that kids are always going to want to read about. Less so maybe today, and what's great about it is the story is it has all those levels of heart, but it's also an adventure story. And to think that you can combine a dog story and a story about how one person can make a difference and how a dog, in a dog's life, and how one dog can make a difference in a lot of people's lives, and then also have a nice adventurous romp at the same time, was a really great thing to take on.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And so the book is, the story is very well suited to bring back to the silver screen as well, I would think.
Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
It would be. We would like to see that, definitely. Mm-hmm. And we know Hollywood, it's a lot easier to remake or rebadge something than to come up with original ideas. So I think you may have done half the work from. No offense for anybody out there in Hollywood.
Yeah, it's so funny, but I've never considered that. But, it's exactly right. And I think that says something about the story, that it's visual enough, that it's active enough. And I think that what you just said is a real compliment to Candy's writing and pacing, that you can, when you close your eyes and think about cinema, you can see this as being a story.
Absolutely. So we'll be watching out for that. Just let me know and send me.
Let's hope Disney's listening.
That's right. All right. Well, we're coming to the end of the show today, but where can people find out more about everything you guys have going on with this book as well as other things? What are the best ways for the people to reach you and to track all your successes?
Oh, well, you can go to our websites. Mine is CandaceFleming.com, and Eric's is
EricRohmann.com.
There we go.
Yeah. And then you have some social media that...
Facebook, Twitter,
which
Instagram.
is...
You're asking.
There you go. Gotta get out there on social media.
My brain freeze here today.
They can certainly track you down. Wow, I was just talking about old-fashioned, and now we can't remember.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
No, he said old-fashioned, not old.
Yeah,
that's old-fashioned.
That's exactly right.
All right. Well, wonderful. We'll get all those messages out and post as well so people can follow not only what's going on with the book, Strongheart, Wonder Dog of the Silver Screen, as well as all your guys' wonderful activities. Congratulations once again. Wonderful book. Great success on it. And we'll look forward to talking to you guys again when the next one comes out.
Thanks, Tim.
Well, it was really a delight to talk to you. And now I've got to go out into the cold with our Strongheart, Oxford.
Hey, who's on the dedication page?
Yeah. You'll see a little painting of him. So.
Excellent. We'll take a look
People
at that.
People who dedicate their books to dogs, huh?
I've done that a few times. I'm guilty of that. That's for
I
sure.
know. Dog lovers. Thanks, Tim.
Be well.
All right. Well, we're coming to the end of the show today. I want to thank everyone for listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. I want to thank our producers and sponsors for making this show possible. If you have any questions, ideas, thoughts, or people you want to see on the show, you can always find us. We're at PetLifeRadio.com. Email us, drop us a line. We love to hear from you guys. So until next time, write a great story about the animals in your life. Put it in a blog, an article, or in a book. And who knows? You may be the next guest on Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Everybody have a great day.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.